David Thoreau, actually born David Henry Thoreau, and he never changed his name legally, but we now know him as Henry David. He was born June 12th, 1817, and I'm going to give you a quote from his best friend, lifelong friend, and how he described him. Author, poet, philosopher, abolitionist, naturalist, surveyor, tax resister, historian, development critic, transcendentalist, Unitarian, lecturer, educator, inventor, satirist, journalist, Republican, and finally, a Yankee. That's it. That's his bio. So I'm done. No. So anyways, he was born to John Thoreau Sr. and Cynthia Dunbar. His father was a first-generation American. His grandfather, who was also named John, came from the Isle of Jersey. And his father fell absolutely head over heels for this young Cynthia Dunbar. And apparently, when they got married, she was already about 5 or 6 months pregnant. So, hey, they were a little ahead of their time. Anyways, she came from a fairly affluent Massachusetts family, essentially the largest pencil-making family in the country. They still make pencils today. The number 2 pencil. So, he was born on Virginia Road Farm, which is currently Thoreau Farm. And he was named for his paternal uncle, David Thoreau. He had two older siblings, Helen Louisa, John Jr., and a younger sister, Sophia. I want to talk a little bit about Cynthia's father because I think he gets his rebel ideal from his grandfather, his maternal grandfather. His maternal grandfather was Asa Dunbar, and all the Dunbars were Harvard grads. And Asa was part of probably the first recorded student protest. And it was called the Great Butter Rebellion. And it is exactly what it is. And I'll give you a quote. His father, Asa, finally stepped up onto the grand table in the eating hall, and he said, "Behold, the butter stinketh." And he began to turn the tables up. And everybody else joined in because they agreed. The butter was bad. And that was also the first improvement to Harvard's menu. And trust me, it took a long time for the following improvements to happen. Because they served liver and onions when I was there. So anyways, there's very little written about his early childhood. He was very provocative and precocious, and he was an early reader and an early writer. And a lot of the stuff that he did write, he essentially threw away. So, while he was being tutored, his favorite course was rhetoric and logic. Favorite 2 courses. And he was about 10 at this time. So in 1833, he entered Harvard, and he lived at Hollis Hall, which is the same hall his father lived in. And he decided he was going to take these courses: rhetoric, logic, the classics, philosophy, science, and mathematics. And he absolutely had no interest in pursuing any kind of career that everybody else pursued. Doctor, lawyer, candlestick maker. He said, I don't want to have anything to do with that. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. I want to do my own thing. So, anyhow, he meets, in 1833, he meets his friend Harrison Blake, and they become lifelong friends. And it's very important, this meeting, because although Thoreau ran in moneyed circles, he didn't have a nickel to rub together. Neither did his parents. A lot of it had to do with that marriage. So anyways, in 1835, he took a leave of absence from Harvard, and he taught school in Canton, Massachusetts. And he also contracts TB at this time, which is going to plague him for the rest of his life. And all throughout college, he tried to do the same thing that his grandfather Asa did, which was to better improve the living conditions of the students. So he had his own rebellion called the Mattress Rebellion to get better mattresses. You know, the mattresses, they sucked. So, Troublemaker, yeah, right from the beginning. So anyways, in 1837, he joins the faculty of Concord Public School System, and he lasts a few weeks. He resigns rather than administering corporal punishment. And this really kind of drove him to recognize there needs to be improvement in both private and public education in the United States. So that same year, he and his brother John open up Concord Academy. And this is where he meets Ralph Waldo Emerson and Ellery Channing and Margaret Fuller and Bronson Alcott and Nathaniel Hawthorne, and John Brown. All of these people are really going to take him in. And these are all people who are substantially older than he is. And they're leaders in their own right. Writers, thinkers, philosophers. So what he does with this Concord Academy is he implements several progressive concepts. One of them is internships in local businesses and local shops, and nature walks. And at the same time, because he met all of these literaries, he begins to write for the Dial, and that was the big philosophy page at the time, and a new progressive magazine. And he writes his first biography on Perseus, who was a Roman poet and satirist. This is also the same point in time. He's actually got a date, and it's 10/22/1837. He decides that he's going to create his first journal, and this is what he writes. This is what is read. What are you doing now? Do you keep a journal? So, I make my first journal entry today. That was it. That was his first journal entry. So in 1837, he continues to write in his journal daily. He does that his entire life, except for the last 2 weeks of his life. And by 1838, he has written over 1,000 essays for the Dial. So I'm going to leave you with that.